demonstrou que o mundo precisa enfrentar esse debate. A semente dessa proposta foi plantada e irá frutificar, mais cedo ou mais tarde. A mudança do clima não é uma simples questão de política ambiental. É, sobretudo, um desafio de planejamento econômico. As prioridades estão invertidas. É inconcebível que não sejamos capazes de mobilizar 1,3 trilhão em financiamento climático, enquanto o dobro desse montante é consumido por despesas militares. Fortalecer a capacidade de prevenção e resposta a desastres é uma questão de vida ou morte. Sistemas de alerta precoce não bastam. O sistema vai colocar às provas nossas pontes, rodovias, edifícios e linhas de transmissão. Vai exigir forma mais eficiente de gerir a água, cultivar alimentos e produzir energia. Vai obrigar milhares de pessoas e de negócios a buscarem áreas mais seguras para viver e empreender. Os princípios voluntários para investir em redução de risco e de desastres, aprovados sob a liderança sul-africana do G20, enfatizam a necessidade de financiamento de longo prazo. Construir resiliência não é gasto, é investimento. Para cada dólar investido em adaptação, ganha-se $4 em prejuízos evitados e outros benefícios sociais e econômicos. Mas um mundo resiliente não se faz apenas com infraestrutura. Quando alguém é atingido por um evento extremo, são as políticas públicas do Estado que ajudam a se reerguer. Contudo, cerca da metade da população mundial não conta com proteção social. Quase 700 milhões de pessoas ainda sofrem com a fome. Vai contra nosso sentido mais elementar de justiça permitir que as maiores vítimas da crise climática sejam aquelas que menos contribuíram para causá-la. O Brasil lançou na COP30 a Declaração de Belém sobre fome, pobreza e ação climática, centrada nas pessoas. Nela, reforçamos 3 compromissos: fortalecer a proteção social, apoiar pequenos produtores e garantir alternativas de vida sustentáveis para comunidades que vivem nas florestas. O G20 pode proteger cadeias alimentares por meio de medidas como compras públicas e seguros rurais. Também pode remunerar quem preserva as florestas por meio do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para Sempre, lançado na COP30. Só haverá transição justa se o G20 liderar o caminho. Como nos ensinou Nelson Mandela, tudo parece impossível até que seja feito. A hora de fazer é agora. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, President Lula. I'd now like to ask His Excellency President João Manuel Lorenzo, the President of the Republic of Angola and the Chairperson of the African Union, to take the floor.
Muito obrigado. Sua Excelência Cyril Ramaphosa, Presidente da República da África do Sul e Presidente do G20, Suas Excelências, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, Excelências. A recuperação global após a pandemia da Covid-19 realçou a importância de um mundo resiliente. Contudo, o nosso planeta e as populações continuam a enfrentar efeitos e impactos catastróficos do aquecimento global. As alterações climáticas são uma realidade e têm vindo a afetar gravemente a segurança alimentar, ao perturbarem os sistemas alimentares, para além de gerarem conflitos e provocar deslocações de pessoas, agravando ainda mais a crise humanitária existente. O novo Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, a Estratégia de Kampala e o Plano de Ação 2026 2035 focam-se na construção de sistemas agroalimentares resilientes e sustentáveis. O Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, em particular com o Grupo de Trabalho do G20 para a Segurança Alimentar, criado pela Presidência Sul-Africana, em conjunto com as organizações internacionais relevantes, como a FAO e o PAM, continuará a apoiar a implementação da Aliança Global contra a Fome e a Pobreza, lançada durante a presidência do G20 do Brasil. Aplaudimos as abordagens inspiradas na filosofia africana sobre segurança alimentar e nutrição. Enaltecemos a liderança da presidência sul-africana no avanço da Agenda Global de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional através da criação deste grupo de trabalho e propomos a sua continuidade no âmbito do nosso programa. Excelências, as transições para uma energia justa e verde requerem a estabilização sine qua non da situação de paz e segurança, particularmente em África, além do reforço da resiliência e do facto de que a resposta e preparação para desastres naturais deve permanecer no centro das nossas preocupações. Neste sentido, em alinhamento com a estratégia da União Africana sobre as alterações climáticas e desenvolvimento resiliente, saudamos os resultados da COP30, realizada recentemente em Belém do Pará, no Brasil, incluindo os respectivos mecanismos de financiamento verde e azul para regiões e países fortemente impactados pelas alterações climáticas. Considero que o G20 deve reafirmar o seu firme compromisso com a Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas e o Acordo de Paris, e mobilizar esforços para acelerar a plena implementação de todos os objetivos, metas e mecanismos acordados, especialmente no que respeita ao financiamento climático. Convictos da importância vital de investir nas transições energéticas, na tecnologia e nas infraestruturas, Angola, na qualidade de presidente da União Africana, assumiu a liderança na Congregação dos Parceiros de Desenvolvimento de África para a busca de soluções adequadas para o financiamento das infraestruturas continentais críticas. Agradeço o apoio dos líderes e países do G20, assim como das instituições internacionais que se associaram a nós nesta relevante missão. Excelências, esta cimeira do G20 reveste de um caráter fundamental para a renovação e o reforço dos nossos compromissos coletivos multilaterais em prol do avanço de um desenvolvimento global equitativo. Para este efeito, o continente africano contribuirá de forma ativa por intermédio da Zona de Comércio Livre Continental Africana, um dos maiores mercados econômicos integrados do mundo. Em paralelo e tendo em conta a abundância de recursos naturais críticos e estratégicos de que dispõe, as vastas reservas de biodiversidade e o seu potencial demográfico, a África terá um papel incontornável nos contributos que prestará para impulsionar a transição verde à escala global. Concretizaremos este objetivo com o envolvimento de todos nós. Muito obrigado pela atenção prestada.
Thank you, President Lorenzo. We will start to pick up pace, as I will ask the interventions to stick to the time allocated. I now ask His Excellency Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, to take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. Each and every one of our nations is home to unique natural treasures, and all of our citizens are living with the environmental reality of climate change. Australians have always known drought, floods and bushfires, but they're more intense and they're more frequent. And as we meet here today, There is a cyclone has hit Darwin with devastating impact on that community in Australia's north. The truth is that climate change carries a human toll for communities battling natural disasters and for those who depend upon the land for their livelihood. It has a devastating impact on our economies. So the argument that somehow you can take action on climate change or support economic growth is a false one. We need to deal with the challenge of climate change in order to ensure that our economies can grow. It is critical that we embrace clean energy, and this represents a generational economic opportunity. The G20 enables us to bring global ambition and global cooperation to this task. And the vital message that we must send to the world is that action on climate change is not a matter of asking any nation to forego the jobs, prosperity or security that its people deserve. It's about working with every nation to power the next generation of economic growth while protecting the environment for generations to come. Next year, we will assist Turkey in hosting the COP meeting in Antalya. And we will work constructively to ensure that there are positive outcomes. South Africa's prioritisation of disaster resilience during your G20 presidency reflects the pressing need for collective action. And Australia is proud to be matching our words with actions. At the UN in September, I announced our new 2035 emissions reduction target of 62 to 70% by then. Our target is ambitious, but importantly, it is achievable. It provides the certainty for new national and global investment in jobs and industries of clean energy. At home, Australia is investing in our Disaster Ready Fund to support communities devastated by these natural disasters. In our region, we're supporting the Pacific family to respond to natural disasters and prepare for them with our Australian Humanitarian Partnerships $100 million Disaster Ready program. And we've put in an additional $100 million into the Pacific Resilience Facility that will be so important going forward. We're also investing in climate-smart agricultural practices. And here on the African continent, the Africa-Australia Partnership for Climate Responsive Agriculture aims to guard against food shortages. Colleagues, none of our nations are immune from the environmental challenges of climate change. All of our citizens can benefit from the opportunities of clean energy. As a forum and as leaders, we have a responsibility to our children and grandchildren and the generations to come to make sure that we choose to do the right thing, not choose between protecting our environment or securing our prosperity. We can do both, and indeed we must do both, because each depends on the other.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for sticking to your time. I now want to ask His Excellency, Prime Minister of Canada, Dr. Mark Joseph Carney, to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I will try to follow the Australian example. Let me start. This session is on resilience, and I want to join others who pointed out in the first session the fragility of armed conflict, condemning the Russia's illegal, unjustified and barbaric invasion of Ukraine, the appalling conflict in Sudan, and our support for all efforts that can lead to just and lasting peace. Now let me speak to climate change. It's been over a decade that we've realized that past is not prologue with respect to climate change. In other words, the tail risks of yesterday become the central scenarios of today. Tipping points are now being realized. And I want to give an example. 2 years ago, the forest fires in Canada alone made Canada the 4th largest emitter of carbon in the world. We have the example of the Darwin cyclone. This year, forest fire damage forests bigger than Sierra Leone, to give orders of magnitude. So we need action on all levels: mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. International collaboration is crucial. I want to thank our hosts, South Africa, Mexico, and others who sent firefighters to Canada to help fight the fires. Coordination through early warning systems. The wildfire satellite system that we're putting in place as part of the G7, global public good, the work of the G20 in disaster risk reduction. Nature-based solutions. We're working towards our 30-30 commitment under the Montreal Kunming Protocol. I want to support the tropical forest financing facility of Brazil's COP, as well as the broader effort, and congratulate them on that. In terms of our own mitigation, I'll just frame it as follows. We view addressing climate change as a moral duty, but also a commercial imperative, as Prime Minister Albanese just intimated. So our strategy on reducing emissions is a climate competitiveness strategy because it will make our businesses stronger. I referenced in my earlier comments blended finance. I'll just reinforce those, the importance of those efforts, including through the World Bank and beyond. But I want to highlight a few other issues before my time is up. First, the importance of high-integrity, standardized carbon markets that have the potential to shift capital flows to those most affected by climate change, including being integrated with JETPs, such as the JETP here, changing the incentives and the financial calculations to decarbonize. I'd suggest that we can catalyze enormous private sector demand for these credits by committing AI data center development to be carbon neutral. We need a price on carbon. I salute my neighbor, the European Union, in pricing carbon and putting in place a CBAM. I'm going to conclude by drawing attention to the situation of one of the members around this table, and I hope Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica will allow me. The economic cost of Hurricane Melissa is about 40% of Jamaica's GDP. Now, through remarkable discipline, Jamaica had reduced their debt to GDP by over 50 percentage points in recent years. That is all gone with the explosive hurricane. This demonstrates the importance of investing in resilience in advance, the importance of catastrophic risk insurance, and the reality of what climate change is doing to our countries. I salute the ambition of the G20 presidency, Turkey for hosting COP alongside Australia next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The challenge that Jamaica faced is a really sad story, and putting the figures that you have, Prime Minister Carney, just makes the case much more a devastating one. Your Excellencies, I am receiving requests for countries who want to forgo their right to speak. That is very welcome because that shortens our list so that we can finish in time to go and have the time to have the dinner that has been prepared. So if any country is moved to follow the same example as the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who have forgone their right to speak, please do indicate so that we do not have to call you up. My next speaker who will be making an intervention is His Excellency, the Premier of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Li Qiang. Please take the floor.
谢谢拉马福萨总统，各位同事，当前气候变、能源、粮食等多种挑战叠加，尤其需要国际社会以团结凝聚力量，靠协作破解难题。G20应当发扬伙伴精神，展现更加积极的政治意愿，推动更为广泛的国际合作，共同应对挑战，合力推进发展。第一，加强生态环保合作，提升发展韧性。气候和生态问题关系全人类的长远发展。这些年，全球极端天气等事件频发，实施巴黎协定目标时间紧迫，任重道远。 G20应当秉持科学精神，坚持共同但有区别的责任原则，体现担当，抓紧行动。中国已经宣布新一轮国家自主贡献的目标，我愿意同各方加强昆明、蒙特利尔全球生物多样性框架的之内的合作，推动第30届联合国气变大会成果加快落地。第二，加强绿色能源合作，推进公正转型，太阳能、风能等新能源天然具有普惠公平的特点，推动能源体系绿色转型，不仅为人类发展提供强劲动能，也将更好地保障各国平等发展的权利。G20应当推动全球绿色产业合作，保持产业链、供应链的稳定畅通，促进相关技术、产品等自由流通应用。中国已经建成全球最大的可再生能源体系，我们同100多个国家和地区开展了绿色能源合作。过去5年，向世界提供的风电、光伏产品，累计为其他国家减少约41亿吨的碳排放。中方愿意继续以自身所能为各国能源转型提供支持。第三，加强粮食安全合作，保障稳定供应。现在全球仍然有7亿多人面临饥饿的威胁，必须采取切实行动，为他们提供必要的帮助。G20应当推动优化全球粮食流通供给，构建大宗商品合作伙伴关系，建设开放、稳定、可持续的全球粮食市场，强化对粮食短缺国家的供应保障。同时，我们要用好 G20 农业部长会等相关平台，加强农业科技合作，提升粮食生产能力。中方也愿意同各国一起推动落实国际粮食安全合作倡议，为抗击饥饿与贫困做出新的贡献。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Premier Lee. I now ask His Excellency Antonio da Costa, the President of the European Council, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Natural and man-made disasters are happening more and more often. They are increasing in intensity and having devastating consequences worldwide. The threat to our communities, our environment, and our prosperity is very real. Take the case of wildfires. In 2025 alone, the equivalent of 1/3 of land size of Argentina has burned down. The European Union strongly supports the approach, priorities, and efforts of the South African presidency of G20 on disaster risk reduction, the ex-post approach. But in this session, I choose to talk about root causes. Yes, climate change is real, and together with biodiversity loss and pollution, it can still be stopped. Despite progress, global pledges to cut emissions are not sufficient to limit the rise of temperatures to 1.5 degrees warming. The European Union is a global leader in this effort, and we are staying the course, fully committed to the Paris Agreement. A couple of weeks ago, we committed to an ambitious intermediate goal of reducing emissions by 90% by 2040. The European Union will remain a trusted partner in supporting the countries most exposed to climate change. Last year, the European Union provided 31.7 billion euros from public sources, and we mobilized 11 billion euros of private finance to support developing countries to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. As Union of Values, we will continue to support this agenda. But we cannot do this alone, and we invite all G20 members to join us in taking bold collective action to secure a sustainable future for all.
Thank you, thank you. I now ask Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Cyril. This time I want to speak about the same topic like my friend Antonio Costa, climate change, but here focus on energy transitions. And it is a message of hope and opportunity that I want to bring to this G20 Summit. It's a message about clean energy technologies and clean energy transitions. Not only do they meet our urgent need to tackle climate change, they do much more than that. Clean energy transitions are cost competitive as never before. They create jobs at home. They open new ways to bring modern energy to the many million that remain without access. And they are a natural fit for many developing economies. The International Energy Agency says that 80% of energy consumption growth over the next decade occurs in regions with high-quality solar resources. And it's not only about solar. There are huge opportunities in Africa and beyond for other technologies, for wind, for geothermal, for hydropower, for new low-emission fuels, and of course for the investments in grids, storage, and other infrastructure that tie the energy system together. So this can be the growth story of the 21st century. And therefore, I would like to assure you of two things. First, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to lead by example. We are firmly on track to meet our own 2030 target. We have an ambitious NDC for 2035, and we have the goal to be climate neutral by 2050, so Europe is staying the course. Second, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to partner with developing economies, to mobilize investments in clean energy around the world. And here let me give you 4 figures that are telling. Of the 2 trillion invested globally in clean energy last year, only 2% was in Africa, while Africa has 600 million people who have no access to electricity, and it is the continent with 60% of the world's best solar potential. So this cannot be. We must change this imbalance. And that is at the core of Europe's Global Gateway Initiative. These are 150 billion euros investment program for Africa, of which 25% goes into grids and into interconnectors. And that is also why, together with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, my friend, we launched the campaign called Scaling Up Renewables for Africa. Yesterday we had a big pledging event. We're working with governments and the private sector, and thank you to many, many of you around the table who contributed to the pledging event. We reached 15.5 billion euros pledges for investment in renewables in Africa. A big success, and many thanks again for that. Thank you.
Thank you for passing on that message, Ursula. I now would like to call upon His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
So it's only me, Mr. President. I'm the finance minister. I'm going to give the introduction in the name of President Macron, who just is at a meeting now. Thank you. Je remercie l'Afrique du Sud d'avoir mis à l'agenda la question de la résilience de ce monde que nous avons en commun. Nous avons ce matin parlé de nos économies, mais nous ne devons pas oublier nos biens communs. Les défis et les dangers qui menacent notre planète ne peuvent être traités que collectivement, ensemble. Les effets du changement climatique, la dégradation de l'environnement, les pollutions, la perte de biodiversité, la multiplication des catastrophes climatiques et l'impact de ces facteurs sur les systèmes alimentaires sont interconnectés avec des conséquences claires sur nos économies et nos sociétés quand le développement et la croissance sont des facteurs de paix. Nous avons tous à perdre à choisir l'affrontement ou le repli sur soi plutôt que la coopération. Refuser de s'attaquer au changement climatique, de bâtir un monde capable de résister aux catastrophes naturelles, de travailler à des systèmes alimentaires performants ou de coopérer en matière de santé, c'est nous fragiliser collectivement. Je me félicite donc de l'adoption par nos ministres de principes de haut niveau sur le financement de la réduction des risques de catastrophes qui soulignent notre volonté commune d'agir plus tôt et de reconstruire de manière plus durable. À l'image des catastrophes naturelles de plus en plus nombreuses à cause du changement climatique, les pandémies ne connaissent pas de frontières. Je me réjouis donc de l'accord mondial sur la prévention, la préparation et la riposte face aux pandémies. Cette adoption représente une victoire claire pour le multilatéralisme. C'est une avancée majeure pour notre sécurité sanitaire qui consacre pour la première fois dans le droit international l'approche une seule santé, One Health. Cette approche, elle doit être notre boussole pour promouvoir l'inclusion systématique des enjeux de santé animale et de santé de nos écosystèmes pour élaborer des politiques publiques vertueuses. L'engagement de la France se traduit par le One Health Summit que nous accueillerons à Lyon le 7 avril prochain. Ce sommet doit parvenir à des engagements ambitieux, des solutions innovantes et des initiatives concrètes pour répondre de façon durable aux problèmes prioritaires touchant la santé quotidienne de nos populations. La santé ne peut en effet plus se penser sans la sécurité alimentaire ni une alimentation saine, car l'obésité est en train de devenir une pandémie. Rien n'est possible sans accès à l'alimentation, ni l'éducation, essentielle pour une croissance économique durable, ni la paix, ni même le progrès démocratique. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous restons pleinement engagés, à l'instar de notre coprésidence de la Coalition pour l'alimentation scolaire, du Programme alimentaire mondial et de l'accueil du sommet Nutrition for Growth, qui a confirmé la forte mobilisation politique sur ces enjeux avec des engagements financiers à hauteur de 30 milliards de dollars. Et c'est pour ça également que cette question sera au cœur du sommet Africa Forward, organisé par notre partenaire kényan en mai 2026 à Nairobi. Cher Président Ramaphosa, chers collègues, la France continuera à porter ce multilatéralisme fondé sur la science de Johannesburg à Lyon, en passant par Nairobi, pour qu'ensemble nous puissions faire face aux nombreux défis environnementaux et sanitaires à venir.
Thank you. I now want to give the opportunity to His Excellency Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Thanks, you, Chair. Unfortunately, the Chancellor's in a meeting, and also the Finance Minister of Germany is speaking. And thank you, President Ramaphosa, first of all, for putting resilience on the top of our agenda. 2025 has tested our resilience and global stability. There is war and conflict, and communities have been tested by the increasing impact of climate change. Wildfires and floods destroying homes in many of our countries. And heat waves threaten our health, food and water supplies, and energy security. It's a heavy burden both for our economies and societies, and even more in so fragile regions and the most vulnerable countries. This is why we need to act. Our actions need to make our world more resilient by unlocking growth and protecting the climate at the same time. We should create the right conditions to create more business cases for action. Protecting the climate and creating business opportunities can and must go hand in hand. To make this happen, we need to use all technologies available. And we need to give space for new technologies to emerge. With the right market framework, new technologies can become the most attractive option for providers and for consumers. Energy transition works best when businesses and end users benefit. For example, in the first half of this year, more than a third of global electricity was produced by renewables. Germany supports the transition towards secure, affordable, and clean energy at home and abroad. In this regard, I want to highlight our Just Energy Transition partnership with South Africa. In this partnership, we exchange skills and technology. Over the last years, South Africa has emerged as a global leader in clean hydrogen, leveraging its huge energy potential and mineral resources. This can benefit countries that are energy importers, and it helps build overall resilience. We are happy to further continue on this energy trajectory with other African countries. Germany is also supporting the initiatives Scaling Up Renewables in Africa, launched by the EU and South Africa with more than 2 billion euros. Beyond creating the right framework, our cooperation is the key sector, with the private sector is key. This is the second lever. If we want to increase our resilience, we need to mobilize the flow of private capital. There are still too many structural barriers politically and economically. This discourages private investments globally, but in particular in Africa. This is why Chancellor Friedrich Merz and also President Ramaphosa just kicked off the initiative's Compact with Africa 2.0. By pushing reforms, members of the Compact help their businesses to attract private investment in the energy sector, but also beyond. And with G20 partners, we launched the scaled initiatives last year. We are working together with leading insurance companies on blended finance to allow the private sector to invest in an easier and more efficient way. We should take these kinds of initiatives forward. Let us work together to leverage innovation and investment for a resilient world, just as we set out when we founded the G20 back in 2008. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We welcome that. I now want to call Her Excellency Ms. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, we all know no one can tackle alone global challenges as climate change and the vulnerability of food systems. As members of the G20, we have a shared responsibility to find a way forward but we also know that way forward must be based on common sense. In my opinion, we must abandon once and for all the ideological dogmatism that is causing more harm than good. In Europe, for example, choices have been made in the past that have brought entire productive sector to their knees without producing any real benefit in terms of global emissions. And in Africa, dogmatic approaches imposed by foreign partners that do not take into account the specificities of African nations paradoxically risk reinforcing all patterns of dependency. This is a losing strategy. So a pragmatic balance must be found between the need to limit emissions and the risk of compromising the most advanced productive systems and preventing the weaker ones from establishing themselves. In our opinion, the challenge is to affirm the principle of technological neutrality, because there is no single solution capable of quickly building a solid alternative to fossil fuel supplies, but also because this spurs research, innovation, and virtuous competition. The energy mix must be balanced and must combine all available technologies: renewable gas, hydrogen, biofuels, CO2 capture systems, as well as research into nuclear fusion, which would change history by producing clean, safe, and unlimited energy. This is the approach that inspires Italy and to which we contribute with industrial expertise, technological capabilities, new financial instruments, and cooperation with other nations. For example, we've launched investments in Africa worth a total of almost 2.5 billion euros, financing projects ranging from the construction of large renewable energy plants to innovative solutions for production and storage. And also on food systems, Italy continues to do its part. We co-organized the last United Nations Summit on food systems with Ethiopia. We are making our agri-food know-how available to our African partners, and we are building public-private partnerships with them that guarantee concrete results. We are successfully working on this, for example, in Algeria, where we are working together to reclaim over 36,000 hectares of desert to produce up of 45,000 tons more cereals and legumes per year, generating benefits for over 600,000 people. And we are now replying this experiment in Senegal, Ghana, and Congo, and aim to involve other nations on the continent. But I want to be clear while closing my remarks. Our goal is not to create dependency. Our goal is to support self-sufficiency, because we believe in dignity of people, we believe in the freedom of nations, and we believe in the strength of genuine partnerships. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, my sister, Giorgia Meloni. I now ask His Excellency, President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung, to take the floor. Okay, I'm sure he's in a bilateral somewhere. I then ask His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Turkey, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to take the floor. There are lots of bilaterals taking place at this time, and now I move on to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Narendra Modi. Excellency Erdogan is there. My apologies. We'll get...
Saygıdeğer devlet ve hükümet başkanları, kıymetli delegeler, sabahki oturumumuzda ifade olunduğu üzere doğal salgınlar, iklim değişikliği ve afetler gibi yeni sınamalarla karşı karşıya kalıyoruz. 6 Şubat 2023'te yaşadığımız ve asrın felaketi olarak isimlendirdiğimiz yıkıcı depremlerin ardından dünyanın en büyük inşa operasyonunu yürütüyoruz. Bu çerçevede 350 bininci konut ve iş yerinin teslimini geçtiğimiz günlerde gerçekleştirdik. Geriye kalan 100 bin ünitenin tamamlanmasıyla 4 yıldan kısa bir süre içinde dünyanın en büyük inşa faaliyetlerinden birini tamamlamış olacağız. Bu süreçte sergilediğimiz dayanıklılık, Türkiye ekonomisinin nedenli sağlam temellere sahip olduğunu bir kez daha ortaya koymuştur. Diğer yandan iklim krizinin menfi etkilerinin en yoğun hissedildiği ülkeler arasındayız. 2025 yılında karşı karşıya kaldığımız zirai don ve ardından şiddetli kuraklık hem gıda fiyatlarında hem de enerji arzında büyük baskılar doğurdu. Yaşadığımız her acı tecrübe iklim değişikliğiyle mücadeleye, sürdürülebilir kalkınmaya, gıda, su güvenliğini güçlendirmeye önem vermemiz gerektiğini gösteriyor. Geçtiğimiz aylarda kabul edilen iklim kanunumuz 2053 yılında net sıfır emisyona ulaşma ve yeşil kalkınma hedefimizi gerçekleştirme noktasında önemli bir dönüm noktasını teşkil ediyor. Kanun kapsamında ayrıca temiz teknoloji yatırımlarının artırılması ve tüm sektörler için adil dönüşümün finansman olarak desteklenmesini amaçlıyoruz. 2035 yılına kadar güneş ve rüzgar enerjisi kapasitemizi mevcudun 4 katına çıkarmayı öngörüyoruz. Şimdiden bu yıl itibariyle toplam kurulu güç içerisinde yenilenebilir enerjinin payını %60'ın üzerine çıkarmış durumdayız. Ayrıca Birleşmiş Milletler'in desteğiyle küresel bir çevre hareketine dönen sıfır atık projesiyle birlikte çevresel konularda çalışmalarımızı güçlendiriyoruz. Bu düşüncelerle Birleşmiş Milletler İklim Değişikliği Çerçeve Sözleşmesi 31. Taraflar Konferansı'nı önümüzdeki sene Kasım ayında Türkiye'de düzenlemeyi planlıyoruz. Son dönemde çok taraflılığın kaybettiği zemin dikkate alındığında bu hususta Avustralya ile sağladığımız mutabakatı çok daha anlamlı buluyorum. Ayrıca Güney Afrika Dönem Başkanlığı'nın gıda güvenliği konusundaki çalışmalarını takdirle karşılıyoruz. G20 olarak gıda güvenliğini tesis etme noktasındaki çabalarımızı önümüzdeki dönemde artırmamızın çok isabetli olacağına gönülden inanıyorum. Tabii tüm bu gayretlerin ekonomik maliyeti çok yüksektir. Bilhassa gelişmekte olan ülkelerin ihtiyaçlarına cevap verecek bir finansman sisteminin hayata geçirilmesi gerektiğine inanıyorum. Değerli dostlarım, Amerikan Başkanı Sayın Trump'ın girişimleri ve önde gelen bölge ülkelerinin katkılarıyla Gazze'de sağlanan ateşkesin devamı sadece Filistin halkı için değil, tüm dünyanın huzuru için azami önemlidir. Birleşmiş Milletler verilerine göre İsrail'in Gazze'de yol açtığı yıkım, Filistin'in kalkınma çabalarını asgari 70 yıl geriye götürmüştür. Gazze'de maalesef sadece üst yapının değil, çevrenin de yıkımına şahit olduk. 70 bini aşkın çocuk, kadın ve masum yetişkinin kaybının ise ne telafisi ne de gelecek nesillerin dimağında açtığı yaranın silinmesi mümkündür. Gelinen aşamada Gazze'de hem insani yardım faaliyetlerinin hızlandırılması hem de yeniden inşa faaliyetlerine gecikmeksizin başlanması esas olmalıdır. Birleşmiş Milletler kuruluşlarının Gazze'de insani yardımların koordinasyonundaki rolünü vazgeçilmez görüyoruz. Öte yandan kış şartlarıyla birlikte bilhassa barınma sorununun giderilmesinde zemin aleyhimize işliyor. Biz sahadaki ateşkesin sürmesine ve Gazze'nin yeniden inşasına katkı sunmaya şimdiye kadar olduğu üzere Filistin halkının yanında durmaya kararlıyız, hazırız. Kalıcı barışın yegane yolu olan iki devletli çözüm için uluslararası toplum olarak çabalarımızı sürdürmemiz gerektiğini bir kez daha vurguluyor. Bu düşüncelerle sizleri saygıyla selamlıyorum. Thank you.
Thank you, President Erdogan. My apologies for ignoring you the first time. Now I ask the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Mr. Narendra Modi.
Excellencies, नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स मानवता के लिए बहुत बड़ी चुनौती बने हुए हैं। इस वर्ष भी प्राकृतिक आपदाओं ने दुनिया की बहुत बड़ी आबादी को प्रभावित किया है। इससे स्पष्ट है कि प्राकृतिक आपदाओं से निपटने के लिए ग्लोबल कोऑपरेशन को हमें और मजबूत करना होगा। इसी सोच के साथ भारत ने अपनी G20 प्रेसिडेंसी के दौरान डिजास्टर रिस्क रिडक्शन वर्किंग ग्रुप की स्थापना की थी। इस महत्वपूर्ण एजेंडा को प्राथमिकता के साथ आगे बढ़ाने के लिए मैं साउथ अफ्रीका को बधाई देता हूं। फ्रेंड, डिजास्टर रेजिलियंस को लेकर हमारी अप्रोच रिस्पॉन्स सेंट्रिक से भी आगे डेवलपमेंट सेंट्रिक होनी चाहिए। कोalition फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की स्थापना के पीछे भारत की यही सोच थी। G20 देश CDRI के साथ मिलकर फाइनेंस, टेक्नोलॉजी और स्किल डेवलपमेंट को मोबिलाइज कर सकते हैं। ये एक रेजिलिएंट फ्यूचर की गारंटी बन सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत का ये भी मानना है कि स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी से पूरी मानवता को लाभ हो, इसलिए भारत G20 ओपन सैटेलाइट डेटा पार्टनरशिप का सुझाव सामने रख रहा है। इससे G20 देशों के स्पेस एजेंसियों का सैटेलाइट डेटा और एनालिसिस ग्लोबल साउथ के देशों के लिए अधिक सुलभ, इंटरऑपरेबल और उपयोगी बनाया जा सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के लिए सस्टेनेबिलिटी और क्लीन एनर्जी जरूरी है। ये सुनिश्चित करने के लिए क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स का बहुत बड़ा रोल है। ये मानवता की साझी संपदा है, इसलिए भारत G20 क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स सर्कुलेटरी इनिशिएटिव का प्रस्ताव रखता है। इसके तहत रिसाइकलिंग, अर्बन माइनिंग और सेकेंड लाइफ बैटरी जैसे इनोवेशन को बढ़ावा दिया जा सकता है। सर्कुलेटरी में इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी तो प्राइमरी माइनिंग पर निर्भरता कम रहेगी। इससे सप्लाई चेन पर भी दबाव कम होगा और नेचर के लिए भी ये अच्छा रहेगा। ये इनिशिएटिव ज्वाइंट रिसर्च टेक्नोलॉजी स्टैंडर्ड्स और ग्लोबल साउथ के पायलट रिसाइकलिंग फैसिलिटीज को सपोर्ट कर सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, नई दिल्ली G20 समिट के दौरान हमने संकल्प लिया था कि 2030 तक रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी को 3 गुना और एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी रेट को 2 गुना करेंगे। इस लक्ष्य को हासिल करने के लिए विकसित देशों को अफोर्डेबल क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस और टेक्नोलॉजी उपलब्ध कराने के लिए अपने कमिटमेंट्स को टाइम बाउंड तरीके से पूरा करना होगा। फ्रेंड्स, क्लाइमेट चेंज और अन्य चुनौतियों के कारण हमारे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर और फूड सिक्योरिटी पर खतरा और गंभीर होता जा रहा है। कई देशों में किसानों के लिए फर्टिलाइजर्स, टेक्नोलॉजी, क्रेडिट, इंश्योरेंस और मार्केट एक्सेस की चुनौती बढ़ती जा रही है। भारत अपने स्तर पर इन चुनौतियों से निपटने का प्रयास कर रहा है। भारत में हम विश्व का सबसे बड़ा फूड सिक्योरिटी और न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम चला रहे हैं। विश्व का सबसे बड़ा हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस प्रोग्राम और सबसे बड़ी फसल बीमा योजना भी भारत चला रहा है। हम श्री अन्न यानी मिलेट्स पर बल दे रहे हैं, जो पोषण और पर्यावरण दोनों के लिए सुपर फूड है। दिल्ली G20 के दौरान इन सभी विषयों पर हमने डेकन प्रिंसिपल्स पर सहमति बनाई थी। अब हमें इन प्रिंसिपल्स पर आगे बढ़ते हुए एक G20 रोड मैप बनाना चाहिए। फ्रेंड्स, रेजिलियंस कैन नॉट बिल्ड इन साइलोस। G20 को ऐसी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजी को बढ़ावा देना चाहिए जो न्यूट्रिशन, पब्लिक हेल्थ, सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर और डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस को जोड़कर एक मजबूत वैश्विक सुरक्षा बनाए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you. I now ask Mr. Masanao Ozaki from the Republic of Japan to speak on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Chairman. 日本は課題先進国としての知見や経験を生かし、これまで災害、感染症、気候変動といった地球規模課題の解決に向け、 各国の要望に基づいた取り組みを有言実行で実施してまいりました。第一に防災について、世界各地では自然災害が激甚化頻発化しており、持続的で強靭な社会の構築には災害対策が待ったなしであります。災害リスクの理解、防災投資、対応、とりわけ災害リスク削減のためのインフラ強靭化が重要であります。自然災害の多い日本は、世界一の防災大国を目指しています。日本はその知恵と技術を共有し、仙台防災枠組みの実施など、国際協力を主導してきました。アフリカやアジアでは、テクノロジーも活用し、干ばつ対策、サイクロンシェルター整備、気象予報にかかる能力構築支援といったハード・ソフト両面の協力を行っています。また、自然災害は被災国、特に低所得国や島諸国の財政にも悪影響を及ぼし、迅速な復旧を妨げるため、日本は各地の災害リスクファイナンスの整備支援も主導しています。第2に、気候変動について、世界の気温上昇を工業化以前から 1.5 度以内に抑えるには、先進国のみならず、主要排出国をはじめ、国際社会が団結して取り組むことが必要であります。日本は引き続き、国内外の気候変動対策に取り組んでいきます。第3に、海洋の環境問題について、日本は G20 大阪サミットで、大阪ブルーオーシャンビジョンを提唱し、各国のプラスチック汚染対策を支援しています。プラスチック条約について、日本は多くの国が参加する実効的な条約の早期策定に向け、関係国の橋渡しを行っていきます。第4に、国際保険について、ワクチン支援を含む新型コロナ対応は G20 との効果的な協力の代表例であります。国際保険は国際社会全体の経済、社会、安全保障上の重要な課題であり、日本はユニバーサルヘルスカバレッジの達成に向け、来月には UHC ハイレベルフォーラムを東京で開催し、世界銀行、WHO のナレッジハブでの人材育成を含め、国際保険を力強く推進します。第5に、エネルギー移行について、安価で安定的なエネルギー供給やエネルギー安全保障の確保は極めて重要です。日本はアジアゼロエミッション共同体、AZEC など、脱炭素化、経済成長、エネルギー安全保障を同時に実現し、多様な道筋の下でネットゼロを目指す取り組みを力強く推進していきます。最後に食料安全保障について、強靭で持続可能な農業・食料システムを構築するために、日本は各地域の実情に応じた生産力の強化に向けた支援を行ってまいります。日本は引き続き、各国と知見と経験を共有し、相手国の主体性を尊重した実用的な支援を行ってまいります。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you. Thank you. I'd now like to call His Excellency Mr. Gibrian Raka Buming Raka, the Vice President of Indonesia.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, leaders of G20 countries, in many parts of the world, crises are intensifying. Global solidarity and decisive leadership are needed to address them. Indonesia commends South Africa's leadership in advancing energy, water, and food security. For Indonesia, food security is not just an economic agenda, but a fundamental necessity for our people. For that reason, the President of Indonesia is focusing on the food security and free nutritious meals for 80 million students and pregnant women as strategic investment that promotes the use of local products empowering farmers and livestock breeders while expanding economic activity in many areas. On the other hand, as an island nation located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, Indonesia faces more than 3,000 disasters every year, from earthquakes, floods, to volcanic eruption. For Indonesia, resilience is not a slogan, it is a daily reality. Drawing from these experiences, Indonesia promotes the concept of sustainable resilience, a framework in which human development, economic growth, and environmental protection can advance in harmony. Excellencies, today's disasters are not only natural, many are the results of human action. We see this in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and the Sahel, and many other regions, where conflicts reduce homes to rubble, deprive people of hopes and livelihood. These tragedies remind us to put humanity at the heart of global governance. The world must not allow and normalize preventable human suffering from becoming the new normal. As a forum representing 85% of the world's GDP, the G20 carries a moral duty to lead by example, ensuring that growth and resilience become two sides of the same coin, driving hope, prosperity, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now want to call the President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung.
네, 의장님 감사합니다. 근본 세션의 주제는 각각 다른 주제 같지만 상호 연결된 하나의 체계적 위험 요인입니다. 유엔 재해위험 경감국이 지적하는 것처럼 여러 분야에서 연쇄적으로 나타나는 복합 위기입니다. 그러나 우리가 충격을 적절히 흡수하고 복원력을 강화하면 새로운 기회가 창출되고 또 새로운 성장 기반이 마련될 것입니다. 이를 위해서 먼저 국제사회는 기후위기 대응 노력을 지속해서 강화해야 합니다. 대한민국은 국제사회의 노력에 동참하기 위해서 2035년 온실가스 감축 목표와 중장기 기후 탄력적 발전 경로를 확정했습니다. 우리 정부는 기후변화 대응을 위한 국제사회의 여정에 책임 있는 일원으로서 함께할 것입니다. 둘째로, 재난위험 대응은 예방 중심, 복원력 중심으로 재편되어야 합니다. 올해 G20 재난위험 경감 강요회의가 다중재난 조기 경보 체계를 도입한 것은 매우 적절합니다. 대한민국 역시 누구나 소외되지 않고 재난 위협으로부터 안전한 미래를 만들기 위해서 노력하고 있고, 아시아 태평양 국가들에게 홍수 조기 경보 체계 구축 등 재난 위험 저감 사업을 지원하고 있습니다. 대한민국은 G20 회원국 여러분과 함께 재난 대응 복원력 강화를 위한 노력에 적극 동참할 것입니다. 셋째, 에너지 전환 과정에서 복원력 높은 인프라 시스템에 적극 투자해야 합니다. 대한민국은 기후위기 대응과 녹색 산업 성장을 위해서 재생에너지를 기반으로 에너지 고속도로를 추진 중입니다. 해상풍력 클러스터와 분산형 전력망 구축을 확대하고 국민 모두에게 혜택을 주는 햇빛소득, 바람소득 공유 모델도 확산시켜 나가고 있습니다. 마지막으로 글로벌 식량 체제 복원력 강화를 위해서 국제사회가 연대와 협력을 지속해야 합니다. 한국은 유엔 세계 식량 계획과 식량 원조 사업을 17개국으로 확대하고 아프리카 14개국의 K 라이스벨트 사업을 추진해 왔습니다. 앞으로도 국제사회의 연대와 협력 강화에 앞장설 것입니다. 존경하는 동료 여러분, 아프리카 속담처럼 비는 한 지붕에만 내리지는 않습니다. G20는 2008년 금융위기, 2020년 팬데믹 위기에 세계 경제 회복을 이끌어냈습니다. 기후, 재난, 에너지, 식량의 복합위기 또한 그때와 같은 책임감 있는 연대를 필요로 합니다. 한 국가의 회복력은 전 세계의 회복력으로 이어집니다. 위험을 사전에 낮추고 충격에 흔들리지 않으며 더 나은 상태로 회복할 수 있는 글로벌 체계를 함께 구축하는 데 대한민국이 앞장서서 기여하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you. I now call upon His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Mr. Maxim Oreshkin.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa. I will start with reminding a personal story of Bill Gates, the renowned Microsoft co-founder. He was an early and outspoken advocate for the urgency of climate change, investing billions in clean energy solutions. Recently, he softened his stance, emphasizing human welfare and balanced policy over alarmist views, where funding for health and development plays the leading role. It happens sometimes that the positions of key figures can change, and the country policy also can change amid evolving conditions and priorities. However, tactics should not dominate the strategy. We stand for long-term and balanced development, aiming at sustainable progress that benefits all equitably. Global climate policy should be reasonable, not dogmatized. It should be focused on ensuring access to technologies and finance. It should also be cost-effective. Energy transitions should be both clean and affordable. Zero and low-emission technologies, including natural gas, nuclear, and hydropower, play a pivotal role in energy transitions, especially here in Africa, where 500 million of people do not have access to electricity. Technologically neutral approach is needed to advance decarbonization without compromising economic growth and SDG 7, access to energy for all. CO2 removal solutions, natural sinks, are not less effective than mitigation, while most affordable and also scalable. Energy policies must ensure energy security and be aligned with structural shifts in global energy demand. The expansion of digital economy, including AI, blockchain, big data, is driving electricity demand comparable to heavy industry. We need to develop new generation capacities located near resource bases and consumers. Food systems, energy, climate change, and disaster resilience are integral parts of one global resilience platform. Global South and Global East play a crucial role in providing food and energy to the world due to their vast agricultural resources and abundant natural reserves, thus contributing to food and energy security. What is also needed for global food security is fair competition and open trade. Well-functioning markets are a key factor to eliminate hunger worldwide. Just to mention that despite illegitimate sanctions, Russia is among the world's major exporters of food and fertilizers, and about 97% of our supplies go to developing nations, of which more than 40% go to low-income countries. Even amidst the background of sanctions that indirectly affect even food supplies, Russia fulfills its mission of contributing to global food security. As for the G20's mission, it is not only to respond to shocks, but to design a future architecture that is balanced and shock resilient. So, global resilience today must go beyond crisis response. It also has to be platform-based. Climate change, disaster risk reduction, and energy transitions are intertwined and should be addressed collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you indeed. I now wish to call upon Minister of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, Pablo Quirno Magrain.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for placing these critical issues not only for the stability of our economies, but also for the well-being of our populations, particularly the most vulnerable. During periods of catastrophes and crisis, the solidarity of nations is most evident. History has shown that despite diverse worldviews, the G20 has served as a platform for cooperation in the most challenging moments of recent history, successfully reaching consensus and coordinating actions and tasks collectively. Disaster prevention cannot be limited to statements. It requires concrete action and effective collaboration with the most vulnerable nations. It is essential to provide technology, materials, expertise, and skilled personnel to develop safe infrastructure and mitigate damage. An efficient approach is to share resources when and where they are needed, coordinating among countries in a practical, bureaucracy-free manner. Disasters tend to occur in predictable seasons and regions. Therefore, international agreements must move from words to clear commitments with specified contributions and shared responsibility, ensuring that solidarity goes beyond good intentions. Allow me to move on to my next point. Food security must be addressed through mechanisms that do not reduce global food production and investment. Argentina is a major food producer, and under market conditions, free from distortions caused by domestic and international policies, it could double and diversify its production. Many countries have implemented domestic policies aimed at lowering consumer prices, which have led to stagnation or declines in production. This effect is not only caused by domestic public policies, but also by international ones. Food markets are competitive, meaning there is a good balance between quality and price. Distorting them through subsidies or prohibitions only harms those who need food the most, because higher production would correspond to lower prices. For this reason, Argentina fights against market distortions, against barriers to food trade, and against subsidies that distort competition. That is why we promote long-term contracts to supply countries that regularly import food, as well as strategic partnerships that ensure food security. Hunger is addressed by increasing food production, not by reducing it through measures that only stagnate it. We're here to cooperate by producing, integrating stable value chains, and selling at highly competitive prices and quality for the benefit of consumers around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. My last speaker on the G20 member side is Her Excellency, Minister of Finance and Public Credit, United Mexican States, Edgar Amador Zamora.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We gather today not only as representatives of our nations, but as partners in the pursuit of a resilient and sustainable world. As we reflect on the challenges that we have faced, be it the global pandemic, extreme weather events linked to climate change, or market financial volatility, we must recognize the pivotal role that the G20 plays in fostering collaboration and resilience among our nations. Together, we have the power to shape a future that prioritizes the well-being of our people and our planet. Investing in disaster risk reduction protects development gains, reduces vulnerabilities, strengthens adaptation to climate change, and promotes economic and social stability. Disaster risk reduction is at the heart of development, advancing the 2030 agenda and safeguarding its achievements. Mexico welcomes South Africa's leadership and vision in this area so that the G20 can contribute significantly to positioning resilience as a global public good and as an indispensable condition for sustainable development. The G20 provides a forum for dialogue that highlights the importance of integrating disaster risk reduction into development planning, public investment, and international cooperation. Discussion within the group reflects a growing consensus. There will be no sustainable development or effective adaptation to climate change without proper management of present and future risks. Mexico particularly values the G20's promotion of common approaches on issues such as early warning systems, resilient infrastructure, and resilient financing. Those efforts contribute to strengthening the global coherence that must be fostered among the development, climate, and risk agendas. Following the recent COP30 in Belém do Pará, Brazil, the G20 had the opportunity to reaffirm its collective commitment at the highest political level to the goals of the Paris Agreement and to strengthen a more ambitious and equitable global response to the climate crisis. The G20 must send a message of unity and ambition, reaffirming the group's leadership in achieving a fair and sustainable global transition that leaves no one behind. Mexico has consistently played an active and constructive role in international climate negotiations, working to build bridges, promote consensus, and uphold key principles such as equity, intergenerational justice, and the centrality of human rights in climate action. The just energy transition is not merely a goal, it is a moral imperative that requires our collective commitment and action. The Mexican people have faced prolonged droughts, intensified hurricanes, disrupted rains, and biodiversity losses. Through our updated nationally determined contribution, Mexico will strengthen its renewable energy and sustainable transport goals, expand nature-based solutions such as the restoration of forests, mangroves, and coastal systems, prioritize community-centered adaptation, and include security as an across-the-board issue linked to climate action. We believe that a just energy transition should encompass the following 4 key principles: inclusion, job creation and skills development, investment in clean technologies, and support for communities. To advance towards sustainable and resilient food system, Mexico has implemented technical support actions through farmer field schools to increase production with an agroecological approach. We also established new seed banks dedicated to the preservation of traditional food systems, which contributed to the selection, conservation, and safeguarding of native corn varieties. Finally, the efficient use of water in food production is a strategic issue. Therefore, we implemented the National Irrigation Technology Program, which includes training and technological assistance to producers to recover volumes for other uses. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. We've now concluded the interventions by G20 members. We now have guest countries that have chosen to make interventions. As we have run out of time, we propose that we allow interventions right up till 6:45. And beyond 6:45, those who have not spoken will then be given the opportunity into the 3rd session tomorrow. We anticipate that we should be able to finish in time tomorrow. So if by 6:45 we have not given you the opportunity to speak, there will be ample opportunity for you to make your intervention tomorrow. We say this as we have some 500 guests who are coming in for the dinner, which we are all invited to, and we should not keep them waiting too long. But besides, we've been at this since 10 o'clock this morning, if not earlier, and I am told that it's always best to get time to rest and to have something to eat. This I get from my wife, who is a doctor, and I am a doctor by marriage. So this is the advice that I have received through my marriage. So I now want to call upon Dr. Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, and the guest country speakers have 3 minutes each.
Thank you. To address disaster risk, the African continent has renewed commitment by adopting the Windhoek Declaration on advancing the program of action for the implementation of this SDI framework for disaster risk reduction 2025-2030. As the cost of disaster increase and international assistance decline, more and urgent concrete action are needed in the next 5 years to sustain progress towards achieving the expected outcome of the goals of the SDI framework by 2030. Our work on disaster risk reduction, climate change, and food security must be transformative. It also requires partnership built on accessible finance and fair technology transfer. Namibia is undertaking broad measures to transform our food system and reduce our dependence on import. Our focus is to reduce agricultural imports, strengthen domestic production, and build climate-resilient agriculture infrastructure with a strong focus on irrigation, water harvesting, storage, and the rural value chain. We are also modernizing our livestock sector, which remains the backbone of rural livelihood. On climate financing, Namibia will need 15 billion to meet her climate goals, with 90% of adaptation cost relies on international support, hence the need to scale up climate financing. Namibia is creating a formal and attractive framework for investment and technological transfer in renewable energy, including green energy value chain. Our goal is to build a full investable ecosystem while calling for a just transformation to allow development countries to space to develop under the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. We therefore urge the G20 to view Namibia as a vital strategic investment partner ready to work on our shared decarbonization. Finally, Your Excellency, as a country which is higher impact by climate change due to our geographical location, Namibia is bidding to host one of the 2 African regional hubs for the Green Climate Fund, and we will appreciate your support. Thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you, President Nandine Ndaitwah. I now want to call upon His Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Chairperson of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. In his current absence, due to, I'm sure, bilaterals, I'd now like to call His Excellency, the Taoiseach of Ireland, Mr. Michael Martin.
Thank you very much indeed, President. And again, thank you and South Africa for bringing the G20's focus onto global resilience. And as has been said by other speakers, disasters are increasing in frequency and volatility, heightened by climate change and conflict, and strong multilateral commitments are needed and are more important than ever. Ireland welcomes the Ministerial Declaration on Disaster Risk Reduction and the overarching approach to identifying, reducing and managing risks before they lead to disasters. On climate, some of us recently returned from COP30 in Brazil, and I was concerned that the spirit of common purpose is weakening. We have made some progress, but we now need to act with unity and with much more urgency. And indeed, the discussions there are proving difficult as we speak to achieve consensus. International climate finance is a priority for Ireland, and we are on track to deliver our COP26 pledge of at least 225 million per year to developing countries by 2025. We will achieve that this year. Our focus is on the poorest and most vulnerable, especially those living in least developed countries and small island developing states, fragile states and communities. Adaptation is perhaps something we haven't given enough attention to. It is central and equally adequate and accessible climate finance is key to countries' adaptation endeavours, and we need to improve that access. In the European Union, as Antonio has said, our sights are on reducing collective emissions by 90% by 2040. In Ireland now, emissions are now lower than at any point since 1990, despite our population growing by 50% over that time period and having successive economic growth as well. On just energy transitions, Ireland is committed to ensure that no one is left behind. We are seeking to, again, as others have said, maximise employment opportunities,
support persons and communities who may be negatively affected, and some will, as we action a climate-neutral society by 2050. On food systems, the world is significantly behind on achieving Sustainable Development Goal 2. Transformation must be at the heart of our work to reinvigorate the 2030 agenda. Our collective commitments will be extremely important in the context of growing instability and economic and environmental crises. Ireland focuses on gender equality, climate action, and fragility through a range of partners, including the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Food Programme, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Women's economic empowerment in the agri-food sector, improving access to finance, expansion of climate-resilient agriculture practices, and policy engagement are all critical channels for achieving gender equality. Ireland has provided funding to the African Union for the implementation of the new Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Programme. In Africa and beyond, Ireland remains committed to supporting inclusive, climate-resilient, healthy and nutritious food systems and to contributing to all of these Sustainable Development Goals. These efforts and the efforts of the G20 are integral to building a more resilient world. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Thank you, Taoiseach Martin. I now ask His Excellency Mr. Sifi Grieb, the Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. شكرا فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوسا. اسمحوا لي أن أتلو على مسامعكم كلمة رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون التي يوجهها لهذه الجلسة، وهذا نصها. تعتبر الجزائر إحدى الدول الأكثر عرضة للآثار السلبية لتغير المناخ، حيث شهدت في الآونة الأخيرة تزايدا غير مسبوق للعديد من الظواهر التي تتسبب في خسائر بشرية ومادية جسيمة، فضلا عن التأثير على النظم البيئية المختلفة. واستجابة لهذا الواقع، وضعت بلادي ترسانة قانونية ومؤسساتية للحماية من المخاطر الكبرى وتسيير الكوارث، بهدف تدعيم المنشآت التحتية وتعزيز القدرات التقنية والتكنولوجية، وإقامة وتحسين أنظمة الإنذار المبكر، فضلا عن تعبئة موارد مالية معتبرة للتكفل بالمتضررين. وعلى الصعيد الإقليمي والقاري، بادرت الجزائر بإنشاء آلية إفريقية للوقاية من أخطار الكوارث، كما تحتضن المركز العربي للوقاية من أخطار الزلازل والكوارث الطبيعية الأخرى، في مساهمة منها لتعزيز العمل المشترك في هذا المجال. السيد الرئيس، إن تحقيق الاكتفاء الذاتي وتعزيز الأمن الغذائي يشكلان أولوية للجزائر، التي تعرف خلال السنوات الأخيرة نمواً استثنائياً للاستثمار الفلاحي، خاصة في الجنوب الجزائري، عبر شراكات مع دول شقيقة وصديقة. ومن هذا المنطلق ندعو دول المجموعة العشرين إلى عقد شراكات مع الدول الإفريقية لتطوير الإنتاج الفلاحي والحيواني والحد من ظاهرة الجوع والأزمات الغذائية. السيد الرئيس، تواجه القارة الإفريقية تحديات معتبرة بخصوص الانتقال الطاقوي، إذ أنها تأوي 18% من سكان العالم، بينما تسجل أقل من 6% من الاستهلاك الطاقوي العالمي، في حين لا تتجاوز نسبة الربط بالكهرباء 45%. وبالمقابل يفرض علينا التصدي لظاهرة تغير المناخ، التخفيف المكثف للانبعاثات، وخلق ظروف مواتية لضمان الانتقال السلس إلى أنماط إنتاج واستهلاك خالية من الكربون، مع مراعاة المبادئ الآتية: أولاً، إرساء آليات تسهيلية تسمح للدول النامية بالاستفادة من الدعم المالي الدولي ونقل التكنولوجيا، ثانيا تبادل الخبرات الناجحة في تطوير الطاقات المتجددة وترشيد استهلاك الطاقة. تعزيز القدرات البشرية والمؤسساتية للدول النامية، وفي هذا الصدد تدعو الجزائر إلى عقد شراكات في مجال التحول الطاقوي في القارة الإفريقية قصد تجسيد تحول ناجح يسمح بتحقيق أهداف التنمية المتعلقة بالطاقة النظيفة والمتاحة والعمل اللائق والنمو الاقتصادي والعمل من أجل المناخ. وتبدي الجزائر استعدادها لمشاركة تجربتها في مجال الطاقة مع البلدان الإفريقية ودول مجموعة ال20، كما تجدد التزامها بالعمل بشكل حثيث لتجسيد مشاريع طموحة مع شركائها بغية تعزيز الطاقة الخضراء النظيفة والمساهمة في الجهد الجماعي لضمان انتقال طاقوي سلس. وشكرا على حسن الإصغاء.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now call upon Dr. Andrew Michael Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the Chair of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM.
Thank you, President. In the first session, I mentioned the recent passage of Hurricane Melissa, one of the most powerful hurricanes recorded in the Atlantic. The true economic impact will take months to fully quantify. However, preliminary estimates already indicate catastrophic losses. Prime Minister Carney pointed out that it is estimated that we have lost, in terms of physical damage, approximately
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Once again, our condolences and our support to the people of Jamaica and the terrible disaster that befell them. And we will forever be holding you in our thoughts and continuing to give support. I now call upon His Excellency Dr. Mustafa Medboli, the Prime Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, and let me start by saying that the world is being confronted with multiple critical and interlinked crises that threaten decades of progress towards the SDGs. Today, global challenges ranging from geopolitical tensions, climate change, and food insecurity to water scarcity, soaring debt levels, demand urgent and coordinated multilateral action guided by the principles of solidarity, cooperation, and shared responsibility. The G20 could play a leading role in advancing the response to the above-mentioned crisis. Access to concessional finance, technology transfer, and capacity building are crucial for developing countries to achieve climate action and just transition. The Egyptian presidency of COP27 has exerted all efforts to achieve tangible progress in all areas of climate action, particularly regarding just transition, the role of multilateral development banks in financing climate action, and above all, the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund. We call on the G20 to take a leading role to improve the MDB's role in financing climate action and increasing their support and lending capacities to allow developing countries to have access to concessional finance and other non-debt instruments, and to unlock investment opportunities for a just transition. We also call on the G20 to encourage developed countries to fulfill their climate finance and ODA commitments. Furthermore, the growing global food insecurity remains among the most pressing challenges of our time. Egypt has taken significant steps nationally and internationally to address these critical challenges. In September 25, Egypt, in cooperation with the South African G20 presidency, hosted the third G20 Food Security Task Force meeting in Cairo with the aim to strengthening international cooperation in this field and alleviating food insecurity in developing countries. In conclusion, we believe that the G20 is well positioned to coordinate actionable measures to enhance finance for development, narrow digital divide, and assist developing countries to embrace new technologies, including AI, in order to tackle existing challenges and accelerate the implementation of SDGs by 2030. I thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. I now have the pleasure of asking Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway, Mr. Jonas Støre, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Norway has for a long time urged to have resilience on the global agenda, and I'm happy to see that the G20 Summit under your chair, Mr. President, is doing precisely that. Belém, as my Irish colleague said, we were there 2 weeks ago, and although there are reasons to be very concerned about climate change, at least we can see and we saw there that the Paris Agreement is working. Had it not been for the Paris Agreement, we could have been at more than 4% temperature increase. Now we are at 2.5. That's too much, but it means that multilateral cooperation, having adapted mechanisms, can work. So we need to work and do that even better. And the world rightfully expects that the G20 can lead the way by setting that agenda. It implies climate finance, key to resilience. Norway has, for its part, double its climate funding. We were supposed to reach that goal by 2026. We are there now. And we still have our ODA at 1% of GDP. But the question is now, how do we invest our ODA? It is not the traditional mechanism that will work. It is if we work with the
financial banks, with the development banks and the World Bank, we can move forward. On the energy transition, it is renewable that is now being the winner in terms of affordability, and that has now to be made available to people in development. 600 million people here in Africa lack access to the modern miracles from electrification, as well as clean cooking, taking lives of so many women and children. So to address this, we have over the last year worked to support Mission 300, the World Bank and African Development Bank-led initiative to provide electricity to 300 million people in Africa by 2030. So we welcome the early progress reported from this initiative, and we are ready to support it further. Let me mention a very different example, Mr. President, coming also out of Belém. Tropical forests, indispensable for maintaining global biodiversity in Africa, in Latin America, in Amazonas, and in Asia, Indonesia. And the new Tropical Forest Forever facility, the TFFF, came out of a Brazilian COP, and I would like to commend President Lula and Brazil for having established this mechanism. Norway will contribute up to $3 billion over 10 years to support this mechanism, which is again an example of doing innovative things with our financial partners. Let me end on the third area, if I may. All G20 members are ocean nations, as we are, and Norway is in fact representing a country with the world's second largest coastline. The ocean offers many solutions to many issues on our G20 agenda, as long as the ocean is managed sustainably. As I work together with partners in the International Ocean Panel that I'm chairing with the President of Palau. And I'm happy to see that we have reference to that in the communiqué from this summit. We welcome the results of the third UN Ocean Conference in Nice, hosted by President Macron, the entry into the force of the BBNJ agreement, and the WTO agreement on fishery subsidies. So in closing, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, for also putting this theme on the agenda in a very appropriate way. And it will give, I think, impetus to the way we work on resilience around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Store. And now I would like to ask the Prime Minister of Malaysia and the Chair of the ASEAN Nations, Mr. Anwar bin Ibrahim, my brother. Please take the floor.
Thank you, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Southeast Asia is one of the world's disaster epicenters. In many years, our region accounts for around half of global disaster fatalities and more than $4 billion in economic losses. Not all these events are driven by climate change, but climate stress compounds their impact and weakens recovery. We have learned that resilience depends on anticipatory investment. That is why our region has built one of the most active disaster response systems in the developing world through the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance, or AHA Center. The science of climate change is crystal clear, yet global momentum is faltering. In many societies, including the industrialized world, there is a rising pushback against policies seen to raise prices and threaten jobs. At the same time, energy demand in developing regions is growing faster than clean alternatives can be deployed. The world will continue to use fossil fuels for some time. Pretending otherwise will not help us plan responsibly. ASEAN's experience shows that regional platforms can advance climate action. Disaster cooperation and energy connectivity, even when global processes struggle. If fossil fuels cannot be eliminated overnight, then we need the technologies that reduce their footprint. CCUS, methane abatement, and industrial decarbonization will all be essential. Meanwhile, the ASEAN power grid and the Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline will help smooth the integration of renewables, and strengthen energy security, even as we scale clean power. These are the kinds of measures that make the transition workable. We must accelerate adaptation where impacts already threaten lives and livelihoods, especially in food and water security. We must advance a climate strategy that is ambitious yet grounded in the realities of our people face. To sustain these efforts at scale, international climate finance must be accessible, predictable, and aligned with the needs of developing regions. Only then can we secure livelihoods and advance shared prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The last to speak on the guest country list is Lee Kinyanjui, Minister for Investment, Trade and Industry from Republic of Kenya, as chairperson of the East African Community.
Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, apologies, Mr. Ali Kenyajui, the Cabinet Secretary, is not allowed, and I am taking his place. I'm the Kenya High Commissioner to the Republic of South Africa. We wish to commend South Africa for ensuring that African priorities are prominently reflected in the summit's agenda, particularly on resilience, sustainability, and equitable development. Excellencies, we recognize G20's efforts to strengthen global disaster risk financing, which remains essential for enabling timely and effective responses to climate-related and natural hazards. We also welcome the G20 focus on expanding inclusive early warning systems and enhancing capacity building in developing regions, which is vital for protecting lives and preserving development gains. Excellencies, the East African community encourages G20 to advance the provision of predictable, adequate, and accessible climate finance with strong attention to adaptation as a pressing priority for vulnerable countries. We underline the importance of honoring existing finance commitments while pursuing innovative and fair mechanisms that align with the needs of developing countries. Excellencies, COMESA is leveraging continental initiatives such as the Mission 300, which targets electricity access for 300 million Africans through its Accelerating Sustainable and Clean Energy Access Transformation Program. Its regional component, the Regional Energy Access Acceleration Platform, provides tailored technical assistance, policy harmonization support, and capacity building to help countries advance scalable and sustainable energy transitions. We emphasize that energy development is inherently regional. Harmonized laws, coordinated regulations, and integrated markets are essential to avoid fragmented progress and to unlock economies of scale in cross-border energy trade and infrastructure development. As we advance sustainable energy transitions, we must ensure they are just and inclusive, fully supporting women, youth, and indigenous communities and workers in carbon-intensive sectors. Excellencies, let me conclude by saying we stand ready to deepen cooperation with all partners, including the G20, to accelerate clean energy access, strengthen regional integration, and build resilient systems that support long-term sustainable development. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We now move on to international organizations. And if we are economic with time, we could finish in a few minutes before we all retire to dinner and thereafter retire to have an early night. I now start off with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres.
Excellencies, the world has failed to keep temperatures to the 1.5 degree temperature rise limit, and about 80% of the world is sitting around this table. A temporary overshoot of this limit is now inevitable. Reaching the 1.5 degree limit is still possible by the end of the century, and that requires making this overshoot as small, short, and safe as possible. In any case, there will be dire consequences. More and worse heat waves, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, and hunger. Africa will pay a deadly price, despite doing very little to cause the problem. Avoiding more climate chaos means bridging the adaptation gap urgently as an essential element of climate justice. Developed countries must keep their promises, starting by doubling adaptation finance this year, and it is my firm belief that it is possible to triple adaptation finance by 2030 with the contribution of the multilateral development banks, as in COP29 in Baku. We must also safeguard the credibility of the Baku finance goals and capitalize the loss and damage fund, including innovative tools of finance. And in keeping with the ambitions of the United Nations Early Warnings for All initiative, we need to ensure everyone, everywhere, is protected by a life-saving alert system by 2027. We also need investments in resilience and technology to boost and protect food systems in the face of climate shocks and disasters. But all our efforts in adaptation will fall short unless we reach a drastic reduction of emissions in the next decade, going clearly beyond the present NDCs, which still lead to an increase of temperatures well beyond 2 degrees. And we need to supercharge the just transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy, as described in the consensus of the Dubai in COP. Fortunately, the economics on our side. Last year, 90% of new power capacity came from renewables. Renewables are now the cheapest source of new electricity in nearly every country, and ensuring all countries benefit means providing financing and technology to help developing countries invest in grids, storage, and efficiency. And it means supporting workers and communities affected by the transition through training, protection, and new opportunities. All of these requires massive investment, debt relief, greater access to concessional finance, reform of the global financial system, all to give developing countries representation that reflects the realities of today's global economy. We need the G20 leadership and support as we build the resilient world people and planet require. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. Thank you for that input. I now call upon His Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mohammed Ali Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Excellencies, it is a great honor for me to present the African Union Commission remarks for Session 2 on behalf of His Excellency Mohammed Ali Yusuf, Chair of the Commission. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for Africa, resilience is not aspiration but our daily reality. We therefore approach this topic with clarity. Resilience must be built on equity, investment, and justice. We applaud the South Africa G20 presidency for highlighting these matters in this G20 tenure. On disaster risk reduction, Africa has established the Africa Multi-Hazard Early Warning and Action System. It is strengthening national DRR strategies. Yet, only 40% of Africans are covered by multi-hazard early warning system, the lowest globally. We welcome, therefore, the G20 high-level voluntary principles for investing in DRR development under the South Africa G20 presidency. This will highlight anticipatory action, resilient infrastructure, and risk-sensitive investment. Our call is to translate these principles into financing aligned with African systems so that every African is protected by 2027 under the G20 Early Warnings for All initiative. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, a resilient world cannot be built without Africa. Our continental framework are ready, our political will is firm. What we require is a G20 partnership grounded in predictable financing, simplified access, and technology transfer, the one that respects Africa's development choices. It is time to move together from commitments to implementation and from principles to delivery. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I now ask His Excellency Dr. Carlo Monticelli, Governor of the Council of European Development Bank.
President Ramaphosa, leaders of the G20. Throughout history, the world has repeatedly faced periods of profound technological and societal change, periods that have shaken established systems. Time after time, it has been the most vulnerable who have shouldered a disproportionate share of the social, human, and economic burden that comes with such transitions. Present circumstances stand apart for two key reasons. First, the pace at which the change is unfolding and its fully global reach have no precedent. Second, there is a growing recognition that transition must be just. Safeguarding the most vulnerable is essential as it preserves social fabric that enables transformation themselves to happen. One transition in particular is taking center stage. The shift to sustainable economic systems, driven by escalating natural hazards and deepening climate crisis. Multilateral development banks have scaled up their collective ambitions to support member countries in navigating this transition. Since 2019, MDBs have doubled support for adaptation investment, recognizing that well-being and jobs cannot be sustained where homes, schools, and business are under threat from flooding, drought, and other climate events. Solutions to respond to natural disasters are also developing. One example, in Seville, several MDBs joined the Debt Close Alliance, which Within this broader MDB ecosystem, the Council of Europe Development Bank plays a distinctive role as Europe's social bank. It advances a climate social nexus approach, focusing on investments that strengthen the climate resilience of most vulnerable populations and communities. Looking ahead to 2026, MDBs stand ready to support their clients through this period of profound global transformation, ensuring that people remain at the core of the solutions we deliver. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. I now want to call, as you see me hesitate, I just had a whisper in my ear from the Secretary General of the United Nations, who has just told me that the main decision of the COP30 has just been approved. So the Secretary General is understandably very happy. and I congratulated him. Thank you very much, Secretary General, for sharing. Thank you so much. I now call upon Andrew Bailey, the Chair of the Finance Stability Board. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Your Excellency. Let me be very brief. Sustainable growth requires long-term engagement and long-term finance. And in turn, that requires us to understand the risks to that finance over the longer term. Climate change is undoubtedly one such risk. But the answer to that is not to have no or less finance. It's to use finance to support transition to a sustainable future. The FSB has a role to play in helping the system to assess risks, providing frameworks to do that, and thereby to support sustainable finance. And I can give the assurance that is what we will do. Thank you.
That was nice and sweet. Thank you. 45 seconds. Excellent. Can I ask Mr. Claver Gatete, Under Secretary General of UNECA, of United Nations Economic Commission of Africa. Let's see if you will be able to beat that record.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I align myself with the statement by the Secretary General. Thank you so much.
Gee, we are on a roll. We are on a definite roll. Ms. Rebecca Gracepan Mayulfs, the Secretary General of UNCTAD.
I will have to do the same, Mr. President, and I align with the statement of the Secretary General of the UN.
Thank you so much. My next speaker is Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus. I am going to give you time because you deal with a different matter altogether. WHO.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Excellencies. WHO welcomes the G20's endorsement of health security and resilient health systems in the declaration and the voluntary high-level principles of investing in disaster risk reduction. Likewise, we welcome South African presidency's focus on critical infrastructure. Strong health systems and early warning capacities are vital for preventing crises from becoming disasters. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed critical gaps in the world's health security defenses. We thank the G20 for its leadership in closing those gaps, including through the establishment of the Pandemic Fund and the Joint Finance and Health Task Force. In addition, WHO has also launched several initiatives for global health security based on COVID lessons. And as you know, at the World Health Assembly this year, WHO member states adopted the WHO Pandemic Agreement, which, when ratified, will become a landmark instrument of international law. Member states are now negotiating the Pathogen Access and Benefit Sharing System, or the PABS Annex, which will be critical for ensuring equitable access to vaccines and other medical countermeasures. We ask G20 countries to ensure those negotiations are completed in time for next year's World Health Assembly in May, because the next pandemic is not a question of if, but when. I thank you, and back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Tedros. My last speaker is His Excellency Maximo Terino Cullen from the Food Agriculture Organization.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I will try to be as brief as possible. In 2023, the world saw the steepest surge in food price inflation in decades. In low-income countries, food inflation reached 30%, pushing households' budget beyond their limits. This implies that the cost of a healthy diet rise substantially, making 2.4 billion people didn't have access to a healthy diet. Countries try to resolve this through different fiscal measures, social protection, and other measures. But Excellencies, the G20 can change this trajectory. Open, predictable food markets are essential, particularly for net food importing countries. We must also invest in resilience, as climate shocks will intensify in intensity and frequency. First, through prevention, anchored on early warning risk analytics, insurance, and One Health approaches, and second, by increasing countries' ability to cope when shocks happen, with a strong social protection and science and innovative-driven agricultural transformation and trade policies that keep food accessible during these stresses. FAO's Financing for Shock-Driven Food Crisis facility tried to mobilize countries and private capital to strengthen prevention and enable anticipatory action. Through targeted investments and the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, we're trying to drive country-led agri-food system transformation at a scale to achieve this resilience. Excellencies, the world cannot wait. Leadership is needed now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to extend my thanks and gratitude to you all. And by way of concluding this, we'd like to say as South Africa, the global community is faced by several formidable and related issues. And a number of them are poverty, unemployment, food insecurity, inequality, environmental degradation, and climate change. The complexity of these challenges does call for enhanced action. Resilience is not merely about recovery after a disaster or crisis. It is about foresight, shared responsibility, and sustainable development. A resilient world can only be achieved through inclusive economic growth, strengthening global partnerships, and reforming international institutions. It means we must be prepared. We must, as a matter of urgency, integrate disaster risk reduction into macroeconomic policies, climate financing, and sustainable infrastructure development. We must also ensure that vulnerable countries and communities have equitable access to technologies, to finance, and the capacity to anticipate and withstand future shocks. As we look ahead, South Africa believes that our collective efforts should focus on three imperatives. Firstly, we must strengthen global early warning systems. For many countries, this means scaling up of investments in data, in technology, and capacity to reach the most vulnerable communities that may be exposed to danger. Second, we must mobilize innovative finance for resilience. The G20 should champion accessible, practicable, and equitable disaster risk financing instruments. We need to pool risk, mobilize anticipatory funding, and forge public-private partnerships. And thirdly, we must mainstream disaster risk reduction into all sectors of economic planning, from energy and infrastructure to agriculture and urban development as well. Sustainable, balanced, and inclusive growth requires that we must take measures to address the severe imbalance in vulnerability to the increasing effects of climate change. Now, those countries most affected by severe weather events are often those that bear the least responsibility for climate change. This threatens to further deepen inequality between and within countries. Developing economies need resources and technical partnerships for effective adaptation. We need to make good on our commitments to fund loss and damage caused by climate change. And as 2025 marks the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, we recognize its historic contribution to fostering universal climate action. And yet, global temperatures continue to climb. We have no choice but to fully effectively implement what we agreed to implement, and its temperature goal. In doing so, we must hold fast to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Just transition pathways are key enablers for climate action. These should encompass a whole of economy and a whole of society approach. In the face of persistent hunger and escalating climate pressures, we face a sobering reality. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization, as many as 700 million people are experiencing hunger worldwide. Excessive food price volatility continues to undermine purchasing power, especially for low-income communities. But we must applaud the G20 for continuously keeping food security at the center of the developmental agenda. South Africa made food security one of the priorities of its G20 presidency, building on the excellent work of previous presidencies, including the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty established under the Brazilian presidency. Platforms such as Agriculture Working Group, Meeting of Agricultural Chief Scientists, and the Food Security Task Force have delivered outcomes that underscore what we believe is the importance of building inclusive, diverse, and resilient, sustainable food systems. Since it was formed at a time of crisis, the G20 and the world has had to confront several crises. Unless we act now to build resilience and sustainability, the crises we face tomorrow will be more devastating, more damaging, and more lasting, as we have already heard from a number of speakers who stood to speak here. Now, that concludes our day today, and I think the day has gone extremely well, and we finished more or less on time. We left with one session, which is tomorrow, the third session, which is really a short session, just a half-day session. We now have an opportunity to have dinner together and to relax and to let our hair down. Those who have long hair and me let my hair up so that we are able to mix and amongst each other and get to know each other rather well. We will now get an announcement of where we should go, and thereafter, that will be the end of the evening. We expect that this will just take 2 hours, and by 9 p.m. we should all be departing for the various places where we are going to rest. So thank you very much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for the wonderful day we have spent.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we invite the heads of state and government